I want to welcome you to Empowerment, where we discuss male issues in the way that God designed for a man to be. Today, I am Sheridan Peters, the host, and I have a very special guest with me today. Right? He is a positive intelligence coach, right? A life coach, a minister at the Church of Christ, Canaan. And he have a whole lot of other things that, I'm sure that, if we go on, we can go on for, I remember he has a program that he used to run, a male polishing camp. I'm not too sure if it's still active.
On.
It's still on, right? Which is influencing young men in the community to make a difference among the young men in the community, right? And he's here with us this afternoon, so we can have a discussion about men. This afternoon, I want to welcome Mr. Michael Stewart.
Thank you very much,
Right?
Sheridan. Appreciate being here.
Yes. You want to say a few words for us? Introduce yourself briefly.
Well, I think that this is a great initiative that you all have in looking at men and looking at some of the challenges that men face, looking at solutions that we could have.
Right.
But we believe that if you have a dysfunctional male society, this society is more dangerous than if you had a dysfunctional female society.
Nice. All right. Well said. Right. So I know we're going to get a lot more out of I know he's a person who has had a lot of interaction with males and male related information, and I know we'll have a very interesting conversation this evening. Right. So this afternoon we want to talk about men in the 21st century, man.
Yeah.
Right. Every generation the dynamics change. The way society operates changes, right? We look the last program we had a conversation about man in the way God designed him to be.
Right.
In Genesis, where he created man in his image and likeness, he gave him work to do. He gave him the beautiful woman that wowed him, and he called her wow man.
Yes.
And all these fancy things, We looked at his responsibility and what you want to look at today is how all those things that God would have mandated or how he would have designed man to operate, how does it apply to us today? Right? Because a lot of things have changed. Women operate different. The whole society setup is different. The home structure is different. We've seen a lot of female influences all around. Right? So how is it a man is really supposed to find his space, and how does he really fulfill his mandate? Right? So as far as that is concerned, I don't know if you could just give us a little from your perspective. How do you think about the 21st century in terms of how male would fit into the context now?
Well, I don't know whether male need to fit in to the context. Because when we look at Genesis, if we understand function and form,
right?
The architects have this saying, form follows function.
Right.
Which means function, once you establish what a purpose and a function is, everything else should fit into that. But you don't fit in everything else to function. Function must be that purpose that you said. When God said, let the sun rule in the day and the moon rule at night,
right,
that was the function, the core purpose. Roles and those functions, we can always ascribe roles when it comes to humans and men, etc. But function, God has never changed the function of the sun nor the moon.
Right.
Never changed the function of the fish. Never changed the function of anything else.
Right.
Why is it we figure the function of man has changed? And I believe the function of man remains consistent just as God has everything else remaining consistent. Now the world is trying to change it. And we are trying to now change according to the rules that is established in the world.
Right.
And I think that's the mistake that we're making in trying to make the adjustments with them. So when you look at somebody in a job, you have somebody who is hired for a particular purpose in a job. Let's say that you are hired as a manager of finance.
Right.
That's your core function. But you have a vacancy for the CEO.
Okay.
That's your role. Role is the part I play. So if you have a skit or a drama, you will have somebody who will play a role. That's not who they really are.
Right.
But the person's function may be director of the movie or the play. That never changes. But he can always occupy any role possible. So when you look at man in a home, his function should not change in my respect of you, but his role can.
Okay.
What part he plays in it. So anybody could wash dishes, anybody could see about the children, anybody could do this and so on. But at the end of the day, he's still the head of the home because God has given that as a function.
Right.
So modern day doesn't have anything. And if whenever there's a clash between my acting role as a CEO and my core function as a manager of finance, my substantive must always hold strong.
Right.
So if a man says, I'm going to see women see about the children, that's a role. But his function is to provide. And if he cannot stay home and see about them and still provide, his substantive function must take precedence.
Okay.
Same thing with a woman. If her role is nurturing and her helpmeet, etc. She can afford to go out and work because that's a role. Roles can always change. But if when there's a clash between her working and the family,
All right.
her substantive must take
That's the
precedence.
key. Right.
That's my respect for you.
Right. So very interesting start. So form, function, role,
Yes.
responsibilities. Right. That's a very interesting way to start the conversation. So basically, what you are saying is that we were created in a particular form, right, to carry out a particular function.
That's right.
And the roles may vary,
That's right.
but the function remains the same. So in terms of well, let's elaborate a little bit on the function aspect of man, right? I know you mentioned in terms of being the head, right, or the leader of the family, but in terms of the man in general in the society, because it is becoming clearer to me, right? And I think you alluded to it in your opening statement, where a society that has dysfunctional, I can't remember exactly the words.
Dysfunctional men.
Dysfunctional men is under a lot more threat.
It's a dangerous.
It's a dangerous,
society.
right? So and I remember I read an article some time back, right? He was talking about they had an issue in a particular school. I think I mentioned it in the last video as well, but I know it's relevant here as well. They had an issue in a particular school somewhere in the States, and they had a little video I saw about it. The problem they were having is that there was a lot of violence. They had about 30-something incidents of violence in one particular day. It was really terrible.
Yes.
And what they did, like a week or two, a little while after, they realized that it went from 36 a day to almost none.
Right.
Right. So when they interviewed the principal, I asked her, well, how come it's in such a short time? And she alluded to one of the critical interventions that they made was the fathers who were available just came and were present at school.
Yes.
Right? They were not chastising anybody, they wasn't roughing up or attacking anybody, but they were just present.
Yes.
And interacting with the students. You see the whole mood of the school changed.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of the function of a male as far as it relates to society, and maybe you mentioned the family as well. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this whole issue of function and form and function?
So the function of a man is to establish a manhood path, particularly for his boys, but also as a method, an example for his girls as to what a man is. That will never change because of the very persona of a man. You'll have that a man carries a certain influence on his children that a woman will never ever be able to carry. A mother may tell to a child many times over, clean up your room, or to sit down. And the child would constantly may disagree or not comply, and the mother may have to talk loud and so on.
Right.
And if a father walks in and said, Did you hear what the mother said? His very depth of his voice, his very manliness strikes a certain command
Right.
in the heart of the child. A woman cannot carry that. It has to be carried by a man. And having visited, I'm just back over the last 2 weeks from visiting a prison in one of the Caribbean islands. And I met with a number of young men and senior men in the prison. One of the things that came out evidently in that meeting individually with them, from the time they told me that they're in prison, whether it's for violence, whether it's for drugs, whether it is for theft or whatever it is. My next question is, describe your family setting. Nobody's in there have come from a family with a father and mother.
Okay. Interesting.
Everybody. Either they don't know where their father is, never met their father, or the father was dysfunctional, he drinks, he doesn't come home, he doesn't see him for days, the father is not with the mother. Consistently. Now, that must say something to those of us who run in institutions, that the absence of a father is causing a lot of the issues that are taking place with our boys and with our girls, because there's no male inside of it. The reason why our girls are selecting poor choices in guys, because we think that the issue is only boys, but they also the girls. Right. There's no example of what a true man is. So they go in search of a man. So if the boy brings things for her, she thinks, okay, then this must be an expression of love. The way how he treats her, it might be an expression of love. So they can't identify genuine love when they see it, because there was never a father to show them that in a home. And some of them who had a father in the home may have been an abusive father.
Right.
So when it comes to the function of a man is to stabilize his home. He has to.
Right. And by extension, because based on what you're saying there, we're stabilizing the home, but you're stabilizing society as well.
That's right.
Because even using the same example that you used there, as a result of an unstable home, we have the society by and large destabilized.
That's right.
So it brings me to a wider point. So we see, even in Trinidad and Tobago, the country which we and by extension the Caribbean and the rest of the world, we're seeing the upsurge of a lot of deviant behavior in men. And well, I'm beginning to understand now that females are now are very present at the party as well.
Right.
Right.
And that's because we are turning this thing into a 21st century issue.
Right.
And not recognizing function never will change.
Right.
And so when we go back to function, everything is going to go back into order.
Everything is going to go back into order. Right. So you kind of answer the question before I finish. Go ahead.
No, but
go ahead.
But what was the question you were going to ask?
Well, I was asking with regards to we seeing a lot of deviant behavior, within the younger generations. I mean, it started from the other, but it's a lot more. It's expressed more in the younger generations, especially the males. You see a lot of murders. Even in Tobago here, we see now a lot of somebody just shoot up somebody, bullets all over the place, like nothing, and it's just like nothing. Right. So all these deviant behavior, right? And as I said before, the females now, as I made to understand, joining the violence and that kind of thing to some, not as pronounced as the male, but they are present as well. But I know you kind of alluded to the answered it before you. But
Well, I want to add on to what you're saying there, because what helps to put empathy and sensitivity into society is love and affection.
Right.
If a boy grows up in a home that has no love, he has no affection, he's not connected to his siblings, he's not connected to parents, because he has never had a home where that resides. It is nothing for him to hold the gun at a stranger's head and blow it off. He feels nothing, because he never knows what it is to lose somebody, because he never felt the love. And he is in a point now that is numb to emotional pain. So he becomes a dangerous person. You add that on to a young man who does not know what it is to love a sister, love a brother, love a father, love a mother, and so therefore don't want to disappoint them, want to make them proud, and so on. He never experienced that. And then you give him drugs, whether it's marijuana or alcohol or what have you. You have doubled the issues that you have. And I believe, this is my personal belief now, that part of the kind of heinous crimes that are going on here today is because if you do a science, you might find it traced back to when we decriminalize drugs. That numbs your brain to being sensitive to things. Now we can smoke it freely. While we thought that it would have reduced the crime,
Okay.
we have not seen it reducing the crime.
Interesting.
Because now they can now grow it without having to go way into the bush. It can now be grown in your very home.
Your very home.
But you already have a numb heart. You don't connect to a family. And then you have a drug that gets away inhibitions. You are never restricted again. Your thoughts, your mind can flow any way it goes, and it is not in its true sense. In reality, you can actually shoot somebody thinking this is the right thing to do and not feel it, because I already didn't feel much for the person, and now I could now do them. So I could steal money from you. You will still hand it over, begging for your life. And because I already have drugs in me, I can shoot you. And when you look at the type of crimes have become very, very inhumane.
Inhumane, correct.
In its nature. Right? So we're really going down a slippery slope.
Right.
And we have to now try and pull that back.
Pull it back. Right. I want to switch the conversation a little bit.
All right.
Same thing, but I want to switch it a little bit. Men and their emotions.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's somewhat all connected, but there is the thing that men should be more emotional, more sensitive. You know, men don't cry enough. You know, but how do you view man? Because before I see that, I just want to add my little bias to it, right? But they say that men are not emotional, but men express emotions. Anger is an emotion, right? Sadness is an emotion. Happiness is an emotion. So we always express emotions. It may not come across in the most pleasant way,
Right.
but emotions are expressed by everyone.
Right.
Right? So in terms of men and emotions, what do you think about in terms of what is put out there in the public as to how a man should emotionally be, as versus how a man is designed to operate?
My own views on this man crying kind of thing, because I don't know that there is any scientific thing that says men who do not cry become violent. I don't see anything like that. Somebody may need to update me on that. Our forefathers, many of them didn't cry. They went through a lot of things. They pounded their hand with hammer and they didn't cry and so on, and they were not as violent.
Right.
I'm seeing us trying to grasp, to find ways, to find answers to why men are the way they are. But you know what I noticed, that they're asking men to cry. And there was a governor in the United States who was on television. He was being accused of being unfaithful to his family.
Okay.
And in it, the rumors were so much that he was, in the interview, he broke down and cried. And he cried saying that it is hurting his family. All of these rumors that are going around, his children, his grandchildren, everybody is hurt. And he begged the nation to at least give his family a chance to deal with some of these things. And I watched the people post on the thing and saying, crocodile tears. Big man like he. Right. But yet we asking a man to cry.
Damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Right. But you know, when I visit St. Lucia, I used to stay home by some friends of mine. The boy went away to the States to study. And while he was in his apartment, a policewoman mistook her apartment for hers
Right.
and went in it and shot him and killed him. You may have heard it on news that took place. The mother was on television calling for justice. And she said she wants justice for her son. And she stood up there and she faced the cameras. Never cried. Oh, what a strong woman. She is a full, independent, powerful woman. She never cried. So we're asking men, come out your role. Because when you don't cry, it seems as though you all are so strong and unfeeling. So start to cry. And then now you are now going to be told that you are being very sheepish and you're now crying with crocodile tears.
Crocodile tears.
And we're asking the women now, stand up strong and face your issues, and you will now become strong. This whole shift that we're doing and this whole 21st century shift is because we are trying to always make the adjustments. With me, if I feel to cry, I will cry. And I don't want nobody use me as Netflix. Movie on demand. And therefore, I put on it, cry now.
Cry now.
Don't cry.
Don't cry. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
No, I'm not with that at all. And I would rather cry in private. So they think men don't cry. But a lot of men cry in private. We don't have to cry to prove anything to anybody. And they're not going to believe it anyway. You see? I prefer to have the strong persona on the outside for the sake of my children, for the sake of my family. If there is something that is going on in the family that threatens the family, I don't want to be screaming on the place and jumping up on top of the couch, the sofa because a snake come inside there and screaming. I'm just as scared as they are. You understand? But somebody has to take that role.
Somebody deal with it, correct.
You understand? And I would rather take that role. You see? I'm clearing my head with that, and people have to determine whether they want to now pander to society, keep changing everything that would determine how we operate as a man and make us operate outside of what we feel natural to something that is fake.
Right.
Because that can always shift after a while.
It will shift when it's convenient. When
It
it's
will
convenient to
always
someone else. Yeah.
Always shift. Always shift.
Yeah, because that is something that I think is very important, because it's something that, you know, it could be kind of confusing. But you see what's happening again, right? Along the same emotional lines as well. It comes back to the whole single parent. I want to touch on the single parent aspect of things. You have a lot of boys being groomed and molded by a single parent female, all right? How does that affect the emotional and psychological, well, in this context, the emotional makeup, development of the child, this boy child, coming up to be a man?
Yeah.
Do you think that is a factor in terms of what we are seeing now in terms of men and how they present emotionally?
I believe so, because children mimic what they see. And if you grow up in a home with a single mother, and that single mother does a certain things that are routine, the child is going to grow up and that is going to be routine. And that might be one of the reasons why we have so many boys effeminate. And I'm not saying homosexual, effeminate, because grooming and combing of hair and dressing up becomes what they see as the norm. They have not seen a man go out there and fix a motor car and come home with grease, etc. So that will have its implications as to how a boy grows up in a home and taking on even response to stress. He's going to begin to respond to stress in that way. If he has a mother who is, when she's stressed out, she screams and she shouts and so on, then the male that is bent towards rational thinking and solution-oriented to say, then let's fix this, is now going to become a male who is into screaming and shouting and so on. Not all women scream and shout, but I'm saying that the making an emotional response to issues would come natural to a male child if his mother is emotionally responding to issues in her life rather than coming to position of how does she go about solving issues.
All right.
So the rational mind may be lost, and now an emotional component is overinflated in her child.
But do you think that the form, as opposed to the nature, you think nature also, how does nature, there's a nature versus nature discourse about certain things, right? Does the nature naturally affect a man's emotional response, or is it the in your view, or is it the nurturing?
Well, when you look at two children growing up and two girl children, toddlers, there's a lot of talk and whispering in the ears, etc., that you might see taking place. But two boy children going out, they're going out into a kind of risk-taking and climbing and so on.
Fixing and breaking apart
Right,
things.
breaking apart and so on. Nature. But when we now nurture them in a way that make them almost change that kind what that nature provided them. Now we don't have the children going out. We have the children staying in. So you spoke about my polishing camp, and in our polishing camp, we try to help the boys to do the things that normally they may not do home because of the kind of single parent family they're growing up. So we were teaching boys, some of them 16 years old, and never pitched marble in their life. So we had this 8-year-old boy, 6, 7 years old, or somewhere there, and we're teaching him to pitch marble. So he's down in the dirt, kneeling down, because when we gave them the marble first, they were standing up and they fling it, thinking that that's the way how you pitch it. But we told them, no, you go down on the ground, and we showed them before. The mother came and saw her son kneeling in the dirt, and she was very angry. And she said that boy is going to come home dirty now, and now she has to clean him up and all of that, because she wants a clean boy. That outdoor wasn't what she sent the child for. So she was angry, and she said she's not sending back the boy again. 8 years old. The boy is now 16 years old. She's having trouble with him because he doesn't go outside. Sits down on his cell phone whole day on the inside, doesn't go anywhere. So she said she's frustrated. The boy said, could you send me back to the guy I went to the camp with? And when he came, his issue was that the outdoors no longer appealed to him.
No more appealing.
It was knocked out of him. Indoors is it. But he's now going to be overweight. He's now going to start having issues physically and so on. But now the mother wants him outside. The time that he should have been outside was when we were trying to help him to appreciate outside. But she didn't want a dirty boy. She wanted a clean boy with no marks on his skin, wanted him because she was nurturing him to be clean and nice and orderly as a girl. But a boy, sometimes boys need a mark on their skin to be able to show. I ride motorbike. When I talk to guys who ride motorbike, if you cannot show a mark, how could you say you rode motorbike? You see? So it's a whole different psyche. So you get rid of that pride that the boy has to boast about what he went through because he's being protected too much. And that's the nature issue that comes inside of there, where we're nurturing them wrong based upon who they are.
So basically, his nature was, when he was 8, he naturally wanted to be outside, but he was nurtured to operate differently.
Stay inside.
To what the natural inclination.
Don't do anything risky. Don't do everything that would keep you nice and clean and well groomed and all of that. You see? But he doesn't want it now.
All right. Interesting. So that whole emotional thing, and I've come to realize emotions are very part of our human existence. Right? A while back, I was, when my parents died in 2020. Right?
Both of them?
Both of them died.
In the same year?
In the same, a month and a week apart.
Wow.
Right? But it wasn't really a mournful, I say it wasn't really a mournful experience for me. They lived a full life, a very meaningful life. They impacted a lot of persons. My father, I think he was he was a father to me and was he half of Tobago. Right? And it was a sobering experience. Right? So I reflected a lot on life and the importance of life and that kind of thing. For me, that is what it did for me.
Right.
Right? And it comes back to the whole emotion about crying and things. I say, people, I didn't cry when my parents died.
Right.
Right? But I really remember them honestly almost every day.
Right. Yes.
Right? Even all at work, people always hear me talk, when I was doing, my father, daddy would have say, he always had a saying for everything.
Right.
So I say my parents are with me all the time.
Right.
I remember some of the things mommy encouraged me to do.
What did your father do?
He was a fire officer, and then he retired. He was a pastor,
Okay.
right?
And your mother?
My mother was a teacher by profession and a pastor's wife. Yeah, but I mean, they really impacted a lot of persons. My dad, he was ill in 2017, and I'm interested in talking about men. I think I could talk about my daddy a little bit here,
Right. Yes.
He got ill in 2017, right? He had a full blockage of his abdomen, right? Immediate surgery. When the doctor discovered it at home, we took him to the hospital, did the surgery the next day, morning bright and early. What was really mind-blowing to me, doctors, nurses, ward attendant, every single color uniform that they have in the house, they have a different multitude of colors. Everybody, wait, Brother Pete, take. But I remember when he did X for me, and they're hearing all kind of stories coming out of how he really impacted people's life in a meaningful way.
Right.
Right? And what really sobered me was that even though he was impactful to the world, I never felt like he abandoned us.
Right.
Right? He was very busy. He was always involved in a lot of things. He was involved in Gideon's, in thing. He always he used to go to all these school ministries. He used to just go and visit people. A lot of things my father was involved in while he was he pastor in a church. But if I start to list the amount of things that I've learned from Daddy and the kind of experience he had with him, it will take us way past this program and into about 2 or 3 programs, and I still would not exhaust it. Right?
If you removed your father from your life, what might your life have been?
I really can't say, but I know it would be very different. It would be very, very different because he was a significant part of my upbringing. And very, very significant.
You go to a church now?
Yes, I do.
Right. Your mother went to a church.
Yeah.
There's a heavy chance you would have ended up in church.
Yes, very much so.
The Bible says in the book of Genesis, every seed shall be in itself, and every seed shall reproduce after its kind.
Right.
Which means inside of a mango seed is a mango tree.
Right.
When that mango tree bears, it will only bear the brand of mango of the seed.
Right.
That's a law that God laid down.
Okay.
Whatever law God laid down in Genesis never changes,
right.
Even though we're talking about 21st century. It remains. So when a man makes a child, he makes himself.
Okay.
The child will have propensities, inclinations, latent attitudes of the father. So therefore, when you also check these guys in jail that I spoke to you about,
okay,
and I asked them, the next thing is, those of you who know your father, you drink, does your father drink? Yes. You on drugs? Was your father on drugs? Yes. We are producing seed
after its kind.
After its kind. And that is something we can't get away from. Therefore, in order to change this, the devil having heard that, if therefore seed reproduce after its kind, and the devil knows God cannot go back even himself on his own word, here's what the devil realized. If I want to mess with society, I don't need to bother with women. I have to mess with men. Because if I have seed to plant,
Right.
I don't have to wait till the harvest to cut it down.
Okay.
I just tamper with the seed. And so therefore, when the devil tampers with you and I as seed, we will produce after our kind. And his work is better done that way. All the time. Have you ever heard them having to hide a female child in the Bible?
No.
There was no need.
Interesting. I never thought about it.
There was no need.
Yeah.
So Moses, Jesus Christ, all of that, they
wanted to
had
destroy
to
the
hide
male-
the seed.
The male child.
Because that is where the issue is. And once you lick up the men, you have licked up the society. Miles Monroe put it this way. The order of a thing determines the importance of a thing. Whatever comes first carries its importance. This building that we are in, it's a beautiful building, but they didn't put the roof first. The foundation came first. So you put the foundation first because that's the order.
Right.
Therefore, if the wall is cracked and an engineer or a construction builder comes in, he's going to say, oh, it's cracked. Open it up, put in steel, mortar it back, plaster it, paint it. The roof leaking, he's going to say, listen, change the galvanize, fix it. But if the foundation is cracked, all of this could be as beautiful as ever. He's going to say, tear that building down. Because the foundation. So something else that Miles Monroe said is that besides that which comes first, it shows the order of a thing, that which comes first sustains that which comes after. So God did not make fish first, he made water first.
Okay.
Because water sustains fish.
Okay.
He made earth first before he made plants. Earth sustained plant. If you remove that which comes first, you automatically destroy that which comes after. So if you take water out, you don't need to kill the fish. Just watch that fish flutter on there. It will die. If you remove soil first, the plant is going to die. Man came first. The order of a thing. And man sustains woman. The woman made the child. But you kill that woman in childbirth. While she's pregnant with the child is going to die. That fetus is going to die because she is before the fetus. Right. And she sustains that. Man sustains a woman. So if you want to destroy a society, all you have to do, get rid of the men, emasculate the men, weaken the men, and women will never be able to survive on their own at all. Because you have destroyed the very foundation it is. This 21st century has to go back to 1st century.
You made a very direct, a very bold statement there.
I'm telling you.
Right? A very bold statement. And rooted in what we would have been referring to all the time, based on the form and function, right? Based on how we were designed, right? That woman, could you repeat the statement again?
Which one of them?
The last statement you made about women would not be able to...
If you remove that which comes first, because that which comes first sustains that which comes after.
Right.
If you take the foundation away from this building but leave the building itself will collapse.
Right.
If you take anything that comes first, you take the water out and leave the fish will die.
Right.
If you remove man that came first, he's going to now cause the woman will never be able to survive without the man.
Right. Interesting. And some people interpret that to mean, these days you have to be very, they expect you to be politically correct about everything.
Well, I guess
some people interpret that to mean
hatred.
hatred for women, or you have a bias against women. Some people interpret it that way, right? But I guess you cannot argue. The facts would always remain the facts.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of women, and we're just emphasizing that we love women. We love the women in our life. We understand that they also have a very critical role to play in the whole picture. Right? And it's like, by no means it is belittling or demeaning or making them subservient in any way. However, but there is...
let me just point out something.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Every time men talk, we are so conscious of what the women will say because we are now raising up men, showing up men, that we start to make the excuse that we're not saying that we don't need you all. But when women talk about women talk about women being empowered,
Right.
women going forward, they never make an excuse and say,
Right.
but men also, that is inherent in what they're saying.
Right.
They don't need to say it.
Right.
We need to know when we talk about men,
Right.
we understand the women are important.
Right.
So it must not be apologetic. A man is a man,
Right.
and God has set us up here, and we've got to be so firm in the way how we believe in ourselves. We mustn't have to apologize to the women for being who we are,
Right.
because they don't apologize to us, and they don't need to,
Right.
because they carry a very important role.
Very significant.
So we just celebrated International Women's
Women's
Day.
Day.
Right. You saw all the pictures of women and so on, and we glory in them and so on. Well, let's see what's happening for International Men's Day. You understand? We have to now take that next role and say we need to now promote ourselves.
Right.
But I think that as men, we expect the women to promote us for International Men's Day.
Okay. Well, for me, if I could think, I'm not necessarily. I know, I understand, and I really appreciate the context in which you shared, right? But for me, it's just bringing the balance to the conversation, because I think this is how the contribution I'm making is in terms of bringing the balance, because I think on both sides, even on the male side, there are some men is like, well, the women and them, and we need them and things. So it's just that I'm just making the statement to bring the balance that, yes, men have a significant role, but women also have a significant part of the picture in a particular context.
When
Right?
whichever forum you ever hear men say we don't need
No, I'm
women.
talking about personal conversations that you have with because, like, for example, I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, well, when I go and when I say XYZ, the woman doesn't listen and take it away because I the man and God says the man. So when I
Right, yeah.
because
I know that
they would have had a level of dysfunction. They would have tried to address the dysfunction.
Right.
And this is how he's presenting now that he has understood
Right.
his role as a man.
I could understand
Right?
that.
So
But
I'm just saying it in terms of the
what
context
you had
that-
said before is that the man saying they don't need woman. I have never been in a forum, in whether private or public, where a man says we don't need women.
Okay.
I've been in forum
Right.
where women say
They don't need men.
We don't need men.
Right. Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay.
But what you just said there,
Right.
yes, we do have some men who go home and figure
Yeah.
it out. When I say jump, you jump.
When I say jump,
Right.
on the way up, you ask, well, how high? While you're up, you're going up.
Right.
Right. So it's just to bring a balance to the conversation. But it doesn't take away from what you're saying in terms of man has a certain role,
Yes,
a certain a role and a function,
that's right.
right, which was ordained by God.
And we have to be
And no matter
confident
how
in
much
our
discussion
function.
and opinions and views cannot change role and function.
No, sir. No, sir,
Right?
at all.
Right.
And
If
we
I'm
have to be
being- if I'm
confident
viewing
with
correctly
that.
from the
And
conversation.
once we are not confident with that, anybody could shift us.
Right.
Yes, sir?
Right.
So,
In terms of the topic of women came up, and I think women are a critical part of a man's life, right? And as we coming down,
yep.
and I think in a lot of cases, a woman could, based on how a woman presents in a man's life, could either make or break him. And even if you're not broken, you could be so distracted that you cannot be optimal, right? How do we, as men, treat with the female aspect of our existence in terms of being the optimal man in the 21st century? Because I think the whole, as you mentioned, the feminist agenda, which has infiltrated in many different ways, right? From the extremists to the more subtle
Right.
ways, And how do you see us men dealing with that important aspect of our existence in the 21st century?
We need to embrace our women. A man is made up of masculinity and femininity. Both are within us. We carry testosterone, we carry estrogen. Women carry testosterone, they carry estrogen. Men have a higher level of testosterone that gives us a deep voice, give us or the hair on our face, etc.
Machismo, muscle.
Right.
Yeah.
It is higher in us. Estrogen is small, is in a smaller supply. The women have a higher level of estrogen and a lower level of testosterone. Remove a man from a woman and she's not whole. Remove a woman from a man and he's not whole. Now that is different from saying that we are not independent and fully made as we are. We are fully made as we are. So when you bring together 100% woman and 100% man, you have 100%.
Right.
Right. But to make us a man, you need a female side of us. To make a woman, she needs a male side. That is what God is all in one. Because God is both masculine in his nature. He's very judgmental and he's very decisive. He makes decisions, etc. But he's also feminine in nature because he's also forgiving. He's also empathetic. He's also caring. So this is what God is in one. We are made in the image and likeness of God. So therefore, God made us with both masculinity and femininity. We must express ourselves in the gender that we have been made in, in order so that we could be able to live our lives to the fullest while acknowledging the part of us that is also part of who we are, yeah, which is the woman. So we always would need women regardless of what it is. So if there's anybody who says that a man could exist, which I've not heard that, but if there's anybody who thinks so, no, it cannot happen. There's no way. And then how could we even say that when the greatest thing that we have fallen for is women?
It's my greatest weakness. Throughout the ages.
Throughout the ages.
Started with Adam, the first man.
Yeah, understand. And how can a woman say that when most of the conversations that they have on Facebook or wherever it is or the hairdresser is about men? Understand?
It's interesting. Yeah.
So we say these things, but we really don't mean it. I posted something on my Facebook yesterday or the day before, and where a girl, 41 years old, said, listen, she grew up thinking she didn't need a man, but she recognized that at this age, 41 years old, I need a man because I could tote my gas myself. I could probably get somebody to fix my car, but she just wants somebody in her life that would do that because it's really distressing. A girl posted on that thread on my page telling the girl, you don't need no man. As long as you have a job and you get money coming in and so on and you could do your own things, you could live without a man. So I clicked on that person's page and went through their page, and most, if not all of what they're talking about is something about relationship, man, and so on. And I say, why preoccupy yourself so much with this discussion?
When you're not interested.
Right. But what I did see is that mere 3 days before that, she had a post that says, I am tired. This thing about being a woman is hard work. And you cannot live this life properly as a woman without getting help. Yes, sir? She was saying the same thing this 41-year-old was saying. It is hard being a single woman. But now that the single woman is saying so, she jumps on and makes it discredited. You know how many times that I'm doing a workshop and sometime a woman would say, I don't need a man, I don't want that kind of trouble, I good, so on and so on. And I did that with that workshop, I heard a girl say so. 2 days later, a girl is inside of the office for counseling. And she said she's lonely. She needs to get into a relationship, but she's getting old and she doesn't know, and she's crying. I said, but weren't you in the conference that I had, and weren't you one of those who said you did not need a man? And she said, Mr. Stewart, let me tell you, it's hard for a woman in front of women to say that they need a man because she'll be condemned by her own female friends. She said, I just said it because I wanted to be accepted by the women folk. But privately, they are in pain. And that is why we have to come out of that and recognize we need each other. We can't exist otherwise. You see? It's a 21st century that we're talking about changing. No, in order for us to live in the 21st century, we have to go back to basics. But God said our functions are because our function will always call us. That's what I see.
Very interesting discourse, Mr. Stewart. I know we coming to the end of our discourse today. You know, is the time, you know, is, I mean, we have to stay within a certain time frame. It's interesting that we couldn't have extended the conversation more, because I mean there's so much more we could touch on. But you know, it's really interesting. One of the things that stood out to me in that last and that may be a whole discussion by itself. Why it is in the 21st century, people can't seem to think for themselves. You know? You're feeling one thing, but just because everybody else around will think that it's politically correct, you know, so you jump and join the bandwagon. When you know to yourself, it is very far from the truth, in reality. But that is a whole that's a whole conversation by itself, you know. But before you wrap up, is there anything that you would like to say on this whole topic of manhood in particular? You know, trying to bring a culmination to the conversation about manhood, how we present in the 21st century, you know, and that kind of thing.
I think in the 21st century, we as men need to go back again to the first century.
Again, right.
And one of the things God said is that a man ought to love his wife as his own body.
Right.
We need to love our wives. So if I have to bad talk a woman with you, I'm really bad talking me, because we are one. If I have to bad talk my wife with somebody else, I'm really attacking me.
Right.
I have to, and as men, I think what has caused the women to feel disenchanted with us is the number of men who do not regard women. So I don't believe in pandering to them and being intimidated whenever we start talking about them, as we were just talking about. But I do believe that we have done ourselves an injustice in the way we treat our women. And we need to start lifting them up and recognizing that the average woman saves a man from himself.
Right.
When you really think about it, we would have gone down a bad road if we didn't have some women who had a certain vision into our potential and tried to encourage us to achieve the potential that we have. And that's what I really honestly think. And at the same time, I've been just celebrating International Women's Day. I want to wish all the women happy International Women's Day belated. And my own wife, we just celebrating 38 years of marriage, and her birthday. And I want to say that, you know, I would not have been able to do and be who I am without her.
Right. Right. Very interesting. Very interesting discourse. And I want to wish you and your wife as well all the blessings for your anniversary and for her birthday as well.
Thank you.
You know, hope you all see many more, see your 38 more with health, strength, not you know, with health, strength and vitality to keep living. You know, and even in the context as I appreciate you coming, taking time off from your busy schedule to come and have this conversation about men. I know you are one of the persons who I really see out there, you know, in Tobago, and, you know, having the conversations on a regular basis. And in case you want to log into his conversations, he's live on Facebook, right?
Yes, it is.
Mike at Night on Thursday,
8 o'clock.
At 8 p.m., right? Where you have conversations primarily about relationships or relationship conversations, right? So you could check him out on Facebook, Mike at Night, right? And see the conversation that he's having. But in the meantime, thank you all as well. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share the program with whoever you think will be edified and blessed by it, because indeed, we really are interested to see the men of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension the world, present in the way that God would really have us to, right? And even as Mr. Stewart would have alluded, we need to understand our form and our function first, right? And present in the way that God would have us to present in our families, in our workplace, and in the community in general. All right, so thanks a lot for joining us, and God blessing be with you all.